Hello, everyone. I'm Wendy Doyle, President and CEO of United We. Welcome to the release of our most recent national research study, which explores the child care needs of women entrepreneurs. I'm thrilled to join you today from Two Birds in Washington, D.C., an early childhood facility serving infants and children through pre-K. I'd also like to thank each of you for taking time out of your day to join us. Please know that this is being a recorded webinar, and if anyone has a note-taking bot, we're going to disconnect those. As I mentioned, today's webinar is being recorded. The childcare needs of women entrepreneurs is a topic that is crucial to the future of our U.S. economy and the advancement of women in business. While many studies have explored women's reasons for pursuing entrepreneurship and the barriers they face, few have specifically examined their childcare needs and satisfaction, and that's where our research comes in. First, I'd like to share a little more about United We and introduce our guest speakers. At United We work to advance all women's economic and civic leadership to make meaningful change. We've been working for 33 years to unite people around nonpartisan policy issues to empower women and their families. It's a team effort, and we've been fortunate to have research and funding partners around the country and in the Midwest. The way we advance our work for change is through a simple but elegant approach: research, solutions, results. Today's national study is part of our Women's Entrepreneur Childcare Project and an effort funded by the Ewing Marion Kauffman Foundation that will generate awareness and new policy ideas to reduce the childcare barriers limiting women's entrepreneurship. As part of this project, we've convened a Women's Entrepreneurship in Childcare Commission and will be releasing a statement of principles later this month. We are also conducting a state-by-state childcare licensing study that will be released in June, and we will continue to raise awareness about the existing barriers in childcare to develop more effective policy solutions. Now, I'd like to highlight our three speakers joining us today. First, we have Dr. D'Angela Burns Wallace, President and CEO of the Ewing Marion Kauffman Foundation. For more than 25 years, Dr. Burns Wallace's leadership has opened greater access to opportunities, shaped policies that expand resources, and better positioned communities to thrive. An award-winning public sector leader and educator, Dr. Burns Wallace is recognized for her ability to envision and implement innovative, data-informed solutions in complex organizations that yield sustainable impact. Welcome, Dr. Burns Wallace. We also have Dr. Tim Green from Open Fields, the lead author for this study, who will be sharing the findings on this important research. Dr. Green is an experienced researcher and educator focused on local and regional development. At Open Fields, he built and leads a team that designs research, data architectures, and tools that shed light on complex problems. His research has been peer-reviewed multiple times, and he has taught graduate-level courses. Welcome, Dr. Green. Finally, we are delighted to have Kelsey Lentz, the CEO and co-founder of Two Birds. Two Birds was founded to transform the way in which community is built with an early childhood education, and the school's all-inclusive approach to education supports the entire family. Kelsey's background in architecture, liberal arts, and business has driven Two Birds' emphasis on environment and interdisciplinary thinking as a core component of children's education. Kelsey has designed award-winning Mars habitats for NASA with her design consultancy team and is also a TEDx speaker. Welcome, Kelsey. Now, let's hear from Dr. D'Angela Burns Wallace from the Kauffman Foundation. We're so appreciative of the Kauffman Foundation's partnership and their dedication to advancing women's economic development. This work would not be possible without their support. Dr. Burns Wallace.
Thank you so much, Wendy, for your leadership and your partnership. The Kauffman Foundation thanks United We for engaging in this important work, and I'm delighted to be here with you today. At the foundation, our new 2035 vision centers on the original vision and intent for Mr. Kauffman by refreshing priorities that affect equitable economic mobility within our communities. With that, one of our three strategic priorities supports the vision in entrepreneurship. We strive to foster greater transformation in our local Kansas City community, and we continue to serve as a national model for supporting and sustaining business ownership. That is why this research is so very critical. We funded this important research because women-owned businesses in particular play a critical role in our economy. For sustained economic growth and stability, it is imperative that the support that we provide is equal opportunity for women entrepreneurs. The information being shared today is not just for our foundation, for our work, but more importantly, it serves as a collaborative effort to share goals and challenges of the entire entrepreneurial community. We are proud to play a role through our sponsorship of this research on childcare needs of women entrepreneurs, and we look forward to seeing its results in positive change that helps to drive economic prosperity in our own backyard here in Kansas City, but also around the nation. I look forward to exploring how we can collectively support the incredible women who drive our economy forward, like Kelsey, who we'll hear from today. Now I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Tim Green to share the study results. Tim, we're excited to hear the findings.
Thanks, and we're very excited to share them with you. Appreciate that framing, which sets up really well the research that I want to share with you guys. So just really to start, lay out some of the background to this. Why would we be focused on this specific issue? One key point is that entrepreneurship is central to the economy. Entrepreneurship provides jobs, it provides innovation, technological change, new ideas that keep the economy vibrant and growing, and have done so since the beginning, since we've called it an economy. Secondly, women are a critical part of the entrepreneurial space as innovators, as business owners. So a recent report from Wells Fargo identified that between 2019 and 2023, the revenue of women-owned businesses grew nearly twice as fast as those owned by men. So women are just a crucial central part of the entrepreneurial landscape. But on the other hand, we also know that women shoulder an outsized burden of household responsibilities, particularly related to the care for children. This is a long-standing pattern. It has changed a little over the time, but it is still a very dominant thing that's picked up in all sorts of research. Women share an outsized burden, whether they are in a couple, married, they perform a greater share of this work. And then finally, we know from lots and lots of studies and many people from personal experience, childcare is expensive and it's difficult to obtain. So a 2023 analysis from the US Department of Labor found that childcare was unaffordable to the average family in every single state. Next slide. So that made us want to ask a couple of questions. One, what do women entrepreneurs need from our childcare system? And closely related to that, is the system meeting those needs? So we designed a study that used an online survey to do that. Next slide. So we did an online survey of 750 women across the country who had business owners, and they had at least one child under the age of 6. So these are women entrepreneurs with young children, the very people who are kind of at the intersection of this opportunity and challenge. Just a little bit about the survey respondents that we got back. It's a very diverse sample. It's geographically diverse. There are 45 states represented. It is racially diverse, with over a third of the women entrepreneurs with young children being non-white. It's economically diverse. We've got a lot of businesses that are very small, and we've also got a fair number that are very large, with gross revenues of over $1 million. And finally, a range of business ages and sectors, revenue. So So it's a very, very broad and fairly representative sample that we heard from. One quick note is that in discussing the findings, I'm going to be referring to women entrepreneurs. That's because it's shorter to say that than women entrepreneurs with children under age 6. We'd have to have a much longer webinar if I said that every time. But so all the women in the sample, all of the respondents were business owners that had children under the age of 6. Next slide. So I want to talk about 4 findings. The first one, and this is the highest, most central one that we want to get across, is that respondents said that their business would be more successful if they had childcare that met their needs. We asked this in a couple of different ways. You can see one of the questions there on the screen, where 57% of respondents agreed with the statement that, in your opinion, would your business be more successful if you had childcare that better met your needs? A slightly higher percentage agreed that a lack of care negatively impacted their ability to run their business. And so we can see right at the outset there's an issue here. And then perhaps even more interesting, and I'm going to be sharing some findings as well that we don't have a graphic for. And if you want to see all of the findings, I would encourage you to go to United We's website to read the full study. It's posted there. These sentiments about the connection between, or the problems with a lack of childcare negatively impacting a business, were more common among women whose businesses were what I would call like more mature. And that's as evidenced by when women said that they spent more hours per week running their business. So, of course, businesses, when you start them, they don't immediately necessarily take 40 or 45 hours a week. You may start them as a side project. The more that women worked at that business, the more likely they were to say that a lack of childcare was a problem. That's also true as the business brought in more revenue. So women and business owners whose businesses brought in more than $1 million a year were more likely to say that this was a problem. Next slide. The second of the findings that I want to point out is, we asked women about what the specific needs from the childcare system were. Like, what needs did you have? And there were lots of choices that we offered. The 3 most common are flexible scheduling, infant and toddler care, and early morning and late evening hours. And really quickly at the outset, I want to say no one in the childcare space is surprised to see infant and toddler care there. We know this is a problem. It's a problem everywhere. It has to do with the business model of childcare, some of the regulations as well, but well-intentioned, and that may be the right, not to say the regulations are the issue, but we need a higher number of staff for every younger child because younger child have greater needs. And so that creates problems in the business. And so we know this is true. Every study finds this. What I think is more surprising is the degree to which the rest of the findings are things like flexible scheduling, early morning, late evening hours. You see there were some women that said they didn't have specific needs, but right after that, weekend care, after school care, part-time care. And I think what we take from this is, while many needs were identified, a lot of the top needs, other than infant and toddler care, are things that have to do with flexibility in scheduling and what we're kind of loosely calling non-traditional business hours. That's late evenings, that's early mornings. The reason why this is so important is that I think we need to remember that the childcare system was really conceived for an older economy, an economy based around 9-to-5 work. There have already been other studies that have shown pretty clearly that the childcare system doesn't necessarily support parents who are shift workers, right? Those who might work in a restaurant in the evening, or those who might work second or third shift at a manufacturing job. I think this is an extension of that same research that finds, women entrepreneurs, when you are an entrepreneur, you may be working on your business in the evening because you may have wage work during the day, or you may have family responsibilities during the day that you cannot get away from. And so you need to do the business in the evening. Many of the women that responded to the study said that they split their time running the business. Sometimes they're at home, sometimes they go to another location. And so the flexibility piece is really then about, can we, sometimes women are home and they can maybe able to take care of the children for a few hours a day, but sometimes they need to be in a meeting. Sometimes they need to go to a job site. And furthermore, that may not be knowable and predictable week to week. People's schedules change. Things can be very fluid. And the childcare system just doesn't seem to be set up to meet the needs of women who are in those kind of roles. So these needs that were identified by women are, I think, women entrepreneurs are a key thing that we want to focus on too. Next slide. The third finding is, we asked women how many types of care they used. And by types of care, childcare is provided by a range of entities, institutions. Following other researchers, we kind of split these into what we call formal care and informal care. Those are not meant to be value-laden terms. It's just meant to distinguish where there's lots of different types. By formal care, we mean care provided at a child care home, a child care center, or a school. So some established entity whose primary purpose is to provide care. By informal care, we mean friends, families, neighbors, nannies, all of the other ways that women piece together and parents piece together childcare needs. And so what we found in the study is actually that women entrepreneurs are piecing together multiple kinds of care. Formal care is a really important piece of that, right? So the paid childcare in homes and centers and schools. But that type of care becomes even more important, again, as the business gets more mature. So you can see there that women business owners whose business bring in over $1 million a year are far more likely to rely on formal childcare as a piece of the types of care that they use to meet their needs. So this just highlights again that we saw earlier that, you know, as these businesses get more mature, as the women spend more time on them and develop them, which is what we want, the formal care becomes really, really important. Next slide. And finally, this last slide is, finding is, we asked several different ways, women several different ways, how they felt about the quality of childcare in their area. And what we found is that women respondents in the survey, entrepreneurs, were generally satisfied or more with the quality of care in their area. And the reason we highlight this is, I will say there's some reason to take maybe this finding with a grain of salt. I don't think we know, and there's some research that shows that parents are not always accurate assessors of the quality of childcare. And so, but what I want to hold this up against is that over the last several decades, there has been a ton of very good work focused on improving childcare quality. And that work is important, and we should not abandon that work in any way. But when we look at women entrepreneurs and we ask them, what are their needs? They're telling us quality might not be the top of the list. They're saying flexibility, they're saying off-hours care, they're saying price, of course. Those things become really important. And so as we think about wanting to fully meet the needs of entrepreneurs, we need to build a childcare system that really addresses the needs by supporting provision of flexible care during non-business hours. That's not going to be simple and easy, but I think it is really necessary if we want to support women entrepreneurs in the broader economy. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Wendy to talk through some of the implications of the research.
Thank you, Tim. We appreciate you and your team's work on this important research topic. Simply put, childcare is a business imperative and should be treated as such. This study reveals that flexible childcare infrastructure is critical to support women entrepreneurs in fueling business growth. If our childcare system fails to meet the needs of women entrepreneurs, we risk stifling innovation and economic development. Now that we have the information available, this research can inform solutions so we can get results for women entrepreneurs across the United States. There are many potential policy solutions, but as a start, we'd advocate and hope you will join us in advocating for ensuring women entrepreneurs have reliable, flexible childcare to increase their business growth, and treating childcare as any other critical business input, such as internet access, accounting, and legal services. Some specific policy solutions include expanding the Child Care Independent Care Tax Credit, Small Business Child Care Investment Act, and expanding the Child Tax Credit. Of course, there are many solutions and no one magic wand to solve this childcare issue. That's where the power of collaboration and collective action comes in. I also ask that you read and share this research. The full report is available to download at united-we.org. Together, by sharing this research, we can educate others and provide support for women entrepreneurs. Speaking of women entrepreneurs, today we are delighted to have with us Kelsey Lentz, co-founder of Two Birds, which is a licensed childcare center and also offers a co-working space. Kelsey, you are a woman entrepreneur with children. who are ages 6 and under, the exact audience who was surveyed for this study. Would you please share with us about your experiences as an entrepreneur and a mom? We'd love to hear about Two Birds and why you built it, and how Two Birds addresses childcare for working parents, and any challenges you or other women entrepreneurs you know have experienced along the way. Now we'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Wendy. I have to say it's been really wonderful to see increasing recognition that, childcare in many ways is the linchpin or foundation for a healthy functioning ecosystem. And it's, work and studies like this that I think create the awareness around that. So as Wendy mentioned, I founded a company called Two Birds. At our roots, we are a childcare company that focuses on providing early childhood education for children birth through 5. But truly, our mission has always been to really rethink childcare through the lens of the entire family's experience. For a little bit of backstory, I started Two Birds when I was pregnant with my first child. I now have 3, as Wendy mentioned, actually all are 6 and under. I was getting my MBA at the time, and being a pregnant woman was, as you can imagine, definitely an anomaly. And suddenly I was thrust into the world of finding childcare. I'd say my immediate reaction was that childcare only existed as kind of these binary solutions. So the traditional setup where you drop off in the morning, you pick up at night, and you have very little engagement with your child's community, with their world experiences, et cetera. Or on the other end of the spectrum, some version of stay at home or cobbling together a patchwork of care that, heavily relied on your village. They're great solutions. They work well for a large number of families, but I really believed it ignored that childcare needs fall on a spectrum and not a binary scale. For example, I needed full-time care. I wanted to get back to work almost immediately, but I wanted to continue nursing throughout the day. I wanted to meet other families with infants. I wanted to feel like I was a part of my child's community. And when I started talking to other moms, particularly those who had their own businesses like this community, or who freelanced or worked part-time, or honestly even worked in a corporate environment, but with a more flexible schedule, they all echoed the same frustration, which is really that the current options ignore the spectrum of need. And, interestingly, between 1950 and 1960, the percentage of women with young children in the workforce jumped from about 14% to 40%. And it's been another 60 years since that very fundamental shift. And we're still needing to find innovative solutions to address it. So that's why at its core, Two Birds looks at childcare as a family experience. Our core service is, of course, the early childhood education. We dive deep on curriculum and learning alongside care, but then alongside the full-time Monday through Friday care, we provide a suite of all-included amenities for the family. We think of it as an all-inclusive approach to families' early years. So we have on-site co-working space for our parents. We offer weekend extracurriculars for our kids. We host parent classes in the evening as work is wrapping up and just before pickup. You always hear it takes a village. And so our goal is to be the village and to stop placing the burden of care and activities and friendships and community on parents. We think of the co-working space as the proverbial watering hole. We think of the weekend classes as the playground mentality of my kid plays with your kid, let's be friends. Our parent classes give adults the chance to learn a fun new skill, hang out while having fun, and experience some of what their kids are doing during the day. I talk to hundreds of moms with young children through work. They're all hyper aware of how important this stage of life is, both for children's early development, but also for the, fleeting chance to be really engaged in their children's life and when they're the center of their children's world. But I also frequently hear that they don't want to do that at the expense of their own identity, their own world, their own career. And so I really believe we have to find ways to allow engagement with care without expecting ownership of care. They're not synonymous. And I think one of the challenges for female entrepreneurs is that they're expected to be. There's a, make it work mentality around work and care. And if we can't help women carve out space for each, then I think they end up having space for neither. Interestingly, at Two Birds, one of the ways we've addressed leveling the gender dynamics has been through the co-working space. A large number of fathers who work traditional jobs now use that space as part of their company's remote work allowances. And inherently, the person who's doing pickup and drop off is responsible for the logistics of their child's care, for talking to their teachers, engaging with the community. Traditionally, that's fallen on the mom, but if the dad's the one working on site, then they're doing a lot of those logistics, which means they're just as likely to be the primary caregiver during the week, which I think is a critical and fundamental shift for the future of women in the workforce. And I do know that, access and affordability of care absolutely have to be addressed in some fashion. I think the findings make that really clear. We've started to pilot some public-private partnerships as a way to tackle that. I really think when you're talking about systemic changes or changes at scale in education and care, the government has to be a part of it. I'm a big believer in public-private partnerships. I think we need to rely on private entities for implementation, but leverage funding and policy at the government level. Childcare is a regulated industry, which scares off a lot of people, but it also means it's highly supervised and audited by government agencies. And so it has the attention of those agencies, and I think sets the stage for us to have a voice in changing the childcare landscape. I really think there are a lot of ways to address the childcare crisis. We're just one of those ways, but I do really hope as conversations like this continue to occur, as national focus continues to grow, that we begin to fill in that spectrum of need and to really identify solutions all along it rather than just at either end. Thanks, Wendy.
Thank you, Kelsey. Great overview. Just kind of a fun follow-up. Do you want to just share the creativity around the name Two Birds?
Sure. Yeah, so we came up with that from the kind of age-old saying of kill two birds with one stone. So the idea of fits a lot of different things. We take care of your children, but we also take care of you. We take care of kind of the personal and education space, but we also take care of your workspace, and this idea of taking care of, families, but also the teachers.
Thank you for sharing your story with us. It was very insightful and a creative model around how to engage the family in the whole childcare experience. So thank you. We have a couple of minutes. So if you have a burning question, feel comfortable of dropping that into the chat and we will do our best to answer it. I think one question for Tim, was there any significant breakdown across race or household income in your data across the survey questions?
Yeah, thanks for that question. It's interesting. I think we did have a good representation. I think that actually we expected to see more difference than we saw. There wasn't a lot, particularly by race. I think race and income disentangling is more complicated, and might take a little more work. But what I think we do see is that, like other research on entrepreneurship has shown, women at different ends of the income spectrum tend to enter entrepreneurship for different reasons, or at least from the context of a different choice set. And that there may be something in there that we can tease out from our data. But I will say it didn't jump out very strongly. I think we were very surprised at the consistency with which the respondents spoke. This was fairly robust even when we did some of those breakdowns. So not huge differences on the findings I shared today.
Great, thank you. And Kelsey, one follow-up question for you. Is there anything that jumped out from the research that really stood out to you?
I do think the flexibility of care is a big one. I think what was interesting to me is the number of different ways in which that question was asked. I think it honed in on and got a lot more detail around what is needed, but also the various forms of what flexibility really means. But the fact that it came up so frequently in the response, I think that is definitely something we have to look at.
Great, thank you. I want to thank Dr. D'Angelo Burns-Wallace from the Ewing Marion Kauffman Foundation for joining us today and for her support. I'd like to thank Dr. Tim Green with Open Fields for actually conducting the survey and compiling the research report, and Kelsey Lentz from Two Birds, co-founder and CEO, for sharing her space and her story with us today. Thank you all for joining us. And to conclude, again, you can access the full report on our website at united-we.org. I'd like to thank you again, and please enjoy the rest of your afternoon.